Bonus Module 1.3 Using the Number of Runs feature in the System Builder. Welcome to Bonus Module 1.3 of your Proform Professional training course. In this module we will look at the Number of Runs feature in the System Builder. This is a very powerful feature allowing you to query the number of runs in a horse's career, last X days, last X months, last X years, in handicaps and in maidens. All 6 of these can be queried using a range of values and against all runs, runs on the flat, over the jumps, on turf, on the all-weather, over hurdles, in chases and in national flat races. Here are just some of the thousands of questions you can ask the Number of Runs feature using the System Builder. How do trainers perform with handicap debutants? Which trainers perform best if a horse wins a maiden and jumps into pattern company? How do trainers perform with horses first time in a nursery? Which trainers do best with runners from the flat over jumps? Which trainers are better with second run in a handicap? The 5 above are the tip of the iceberg. There are literally thousands of queries you can perform with the Number of Runs tool. Let's take a look at a few examples. So we have Proform open, and let's open the System Builder, and we'll hide the buttons and size the screen, and we'll have a look at the Number of Runs grid, and this is on the Horse 2 tab. Now you can see the grid consists of lots of boxes with 2 sets of columns. The columns across the top are for the type of races, so all means all races, flat means all flat races, so all weather and turf, jumps means all jumps types races, so chase, hurdle and national flat. And then you have the 5 individual race types split out with boxes for each one. And down the left you have these 6 areas that you can enter data against. So you have career runs, last X days where you can enter a number in the last X days box, last X months, last X years, handicaps and maidens. So one of the first things you might want to do is just find qualifiers that are running in a handicap for the first time. Now the way to do this is on an individual race type basis. So we'll take an example and look at handicap chases. So in the chase handicap box we would enter 0, which means it's never had an handicap chase run before, and we want to look at races today that are handicap chases. So in the race tab we would just select chases, which are handicaps, and then the date tab we don't want to look at past results at this stage, we just want to find qualifiers, so we enter 0 in the number of days to look backwards in the database. So just to recap, we just want to find horses making their handicap chase debut, so we enter 0 in the handicap chase box. Today it needs to be a handicap chase, so we've chosen chase and handicap on the race tab, and we only want to look at qualifiers, so we've chosen 0 in the number of days to look back in the database. We now run this system and we get nothing in the results box because we entered 0 in the days, but we get 5 qualifiers that are making their handicap chase debut. And if we take favoured nation and have a look at its form in the data view, we can see it's raced in national flat races, novice and maiden hurdles and a novice chase, and today is running in a novice handicap chase. So the next step may be to analyse how a trainer does with horses going into an handicap chase for the first time. So we'll take John Joe O'Neill as an example. So in the horse tab under the trainer name we enter John Joe O'Neill, and on the date tab we now want to take out the 0 days because we actually want to look back at all John Joe O'Neill's past performances with these types of horses. And we'll present by trainer so we can see that we've chosen the correct trainer's name. We run the system again. And we get John Joe O'Neill's record with horses in a first time handicap chase, which is 15.47% and an AE value of 1.18. We could take this a step further and see how these perform when AP McCoy is a jockey, like today, by just presenting these results by jockey. And we can see AP McCoy has ridden about half of the runners and has got an 18% strike rate on these runners, making a profit to Betfair SP and SP and a 1.10 AE value. We sort by number of runners. We can see where the rest of the winners have come from. If we go back to our original query for declarations, and we can see that the 815 has got 3 handicap debutants in. So rather than doing each of the trainer individually to see how they work out when they put horses in that handicap chase for the first time, we could use the declarations tab to just choose the one race to analyse. So on the date tab, in the declarations part, we want to restrict by using trainers for races that are running today, and we just want to choose the 815 at Utoxeter. Now remember, we've still got the 0 days in there, so we'll remove the 0 days so it looks back through the full database, and we've still got set 0 handicap chase runs and today being an handicap chase. So we run the system now. So we're presented with the list of trainers with runners in this race and their records with handicap debutants in handicap chases. And below, the 3 qualifiers that are actually making their handicap chase debut. And there's 2 from the Evan Williams yard, which have a 10.48% strike rate, slightly below A value, and 1 from the David Bridgewater yard, which has 2 from 14, which is a pretty small sample size. You actually get the record of the other trainers in the race with handicap debutants, even though they haven't got one in that particular race. But that can sometimes help in throwing up something you might want to save later. Now most of these have got too small a sample size. We could delve a little further into the Evan Williams record by entering his name into the trainer's box, and we'll just run that again so we can just see his individual record. And then if we present by jockey, we can see which jockeys perform best with his handicap debutants. So let's go through this whole process again now, but for turf races instead of handicap chases. So if we reset all the system variables, then we go back to Horse 2 tab. On the turf handicaps box, we want to enter 0 handicap runs. And in the race tab, we'll just choose turf handicaps. And then on the date tab, we'll enter 0 in the days backwards in the database, so we only look for qualifiers. Run the system, and we're shown the qualifiers for the next 2 days that are making their handicap debut. We can see that the 230 at Pontefract is a nursery handicap for 2-year-olds. So we'll look at how to analyse this a little bit deeper and look at how the trainers perform with horses on their handicap debut when it's their first run in a nursery handicap. So if we use a declaration type again and go back to the date tab, choose today's date, analyse by trainer, choose the race, which was the 230 at Pontefract, take out the restriction of 0 days so we could look back at the full database, and then run the system. This returns the trainer's record in this race when the horses are making their handicap debut. So the first horse up is Scargill of Brian Ellison's, and we can see his record is a poor 2 from 116 when horses are making their handicap debut, and a very low A value. The chi score of 5 signifies that it's not by chance, and overall he doesn't do well with handicap debutants. The best record of these is Sir Mark Prescott's, which is a 23.5% strike rate with handicap debutants and a 1.11 A index. The next thing to do will be to restrict the results to just nursery handicaps. So we've currently got it set to turfs handicaps only. In the classifications tab, if we deselect everything and select nurseries, then we're only going to be looking at form in nursery handicaps on turf. Run the system again, and we can see the results for the trainers with runners in this race. So Sir Mark Prescott's record is not quite as good as in all handicaps, but is still positive. And Brian Ellison's, although the sample size is small, he's had 0 from 23, first time up in a nursery handicap on turf. If we go back to the Horse 2 tab, we'll show you a slightly more complicated example of using the number of runs grid. So if we reset the variables, what we're going to look at here is horses that have had 3 runs in a maiden flat race without winning and are then making their handicap debut. We're first going to restrict to just look from 2008 onwards. So we deselect the years up to 2008. Then in the Horse 2 tab, under flat runs, we want to enter exactly 3 maidens. Now in these fields you can actually enter things like greater than or equal to 2 and less than or equal to 3 and so on. But for this example we'll use 3 maiden runs. It also wants to be its only 3 career runs, and it's had 0 handicap runs on the flat. Today's race is a flat handicap, so we choose handicaps in the race tab and turf and all weather. And then on the last time out horse tab, we want to enter a finishing position last time out of greater than 1, so it did not win. Now because we've selected 3 maiden races, if it had won its first maiden race, then it won't be shown in these qualifiers because it can't have run in 2 more maidens since it's already won 1. So by entering greater than 1 on the last time out finishing position, this means on the horse's last race it did not win, which signifies on its first 2 maiden races it also can't have won. Now we'll first of all just look at the bottom line breakdown to see what the overall totals are for these type of horses. So we can see since 2008 there's been 9,778 of these types of runners. 822 have won for an 8.41% strike rate. The expected winners is very close at 818.72, so the A value is bang on at 1. So this gives us a baseline for the strike rate overall for these types of runners. Horses that have run 3 times in maidens on the flat and are making their handicap debut. And you can see below we have some qualifiers that are doing just that today. And if we just look at the first one so we can see the example of its form, we can see that Midnight Musida has had 3 runs in turf maidens, and today it's making its handicap debut in a nursery handicap. So now we have a baseline figure of 8.41 strike rate. We could now present these results by trainer. We'll also add in a filter. And the best filter I always find is to add in greater than or equal to 5 expected winners. This makes sure the sample size for the trainers is significant enough. So we'll run this again now. It's exactly the same query but presented by trainer, but only those that have got 5 expected winners or more. So we now have a list of all the trainers' records, and we can sort these by profitability to Betfair SP or to SP. We can sort by A index to see which ones are running a lot higher than expected. We click again and resort in reverse order. We can see the ones that are doing a lot worse than expected with handicap debutants after 3 maiden runs. If we sort by strike rate, we can see the ones that are much higher than the baseline of 8.7 that we had before. So all these have got an higher strike rate than the baseline strike rate for these types of horses. So any of these trainers you could now look in more detail or save them as a system. Well, that's it for bonus module 1.3. The only thing stopping you finding some amazing systems using the number of runs feature is your imagination. The feature can be used in so many ways I could run a full day seminar explaining them. It's likely I'll do a lot more videos on this subject and add them to the bonus module area.